And we're live on YouTube. Welcome everyone to another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. We'll be following along the agenda that was posted in the NPM RFC's repo, issue number 311. I'll just copy and paste or spam the meeting notes doc for folks. Feel free to add yourself as an attendee if you're joining. And yeah, we'll be following along here. Apologize for the last few weeks. We've had to push these calls out, but I appreciate everybody being patient with us. Quick sort of code of conduct acknowledgement. These calls and all comms on the RFC's repo are covered over a code of conduct, which you can go see on the npm.js.com in the policy section there. Please be kind, respectful on these calls. Please raise your hand if folks are speaking, and I'll try to call upon you to speak. We only have a small agenda today, but I've tried best to sort of curate as best as possible and try to sort of formulate some discussion. I know we don't have exactly everybody that we'd love to have on the call today, but I'm guessing that this is going to span not just this call, but calls for sure in the future. And there's opportunity to obviously have async communication happen on this. Before we dive into the first item that is queued up here, just wanted to put out a quick announcement from our team that we're looking to make NPM 7 GA pretty soon here, which means that when you go to install the latest NPM, it will be v7. So please, if you can, test it out. Continue to give us feedback. We've been poking and prodding at these releases for what feels like almost a full year now, and really appreciate the feedback we've gotten so far. So that's incoming, inbound, that change. So just want to be mindful and give everybody a heads up that we'd love if you think that there's any issues we haven't solved or major pain points before that time, definitely poke us. Did anybody else have any announcements they want to share? If not, we'll dive into the first item on the agenda, which is the file path resolution review. This was sort of brought up based on the issue that I've linked here, which was 2145 in the actual CLI repo. And I will share that issue. The behavior of essentially linked depths here has changed from v6. So if a package isn't actually nested within the root of your project, we're not going to install its dependencies. And essentially the reason why I want to bring this up again is just to question and ask if we want to actually change this behavior. And it sort of ties into the next item, which is more a workspaces review, but want to get people's thoughts on this. I believe we had some, and I'm not sure, Isaac, if you can speak to this. You may not have a great connection, but I believe we have some course of action that we can take here in terms of like reintroducing and supporting this. Just wondering what the impact is. This was, we haven't seen a lot of people complaining, but.
Yeah, so just like real quick context, NPM 6 was, and not just NPM 6, but like NPM 6 and before, was a little bit weird with how it handled targets of symlinked packages in the tree. When you do an install, it would sometimes kind of read through and also install the dependencies of that symlinked target within the symlinked target. It would occasionally hoist those dependencies up to the root package, even though the symlinked target couldn't see them there, which was kind of a source of a lot of very strange bugs over the years. And the intention, which was not always followed, was that a symlink target would get its dependencies installed if and only if it was underneath the root package, the root project. Now in npm 7, we actually did implement that that intention very faithfully. And what we found was that people were relying on the edge cases where that was not being done, where it would sort of descend into the child packages of a linked target, even though it was in some external folder. So this raises an interesting question. Should we do that all the time? Should we just tell people, sorry, that was a bug, too bad that you were depending on it, but you're going to have to just cd into that folder and then run an install there? Or is there a different set of a different kind of constraint for when we follow a symlink into its target to install dependencies and when we don't? I'm personally, I don't think there's actually much harm in any of these approaches, so long as it's something that we can, document and test and have very consistent, because the inconsistency in how npm 6 and before did it was a bigger problem than any downsides of anything we choose here. So yeah, that's kind of why I think last week or week before, a couple of weeks ago, I suggested bringing this up just as a thing to discuss.
Yeah. Wes, I see your hands up.
Yeah, they moved the hand up button, by the way. It took me a minute to find it. So if anybody's looking, it's in the reactions now. So I think I've hit all of those things that you described, Isaac, in the past. I agree. It was very unpredictable. I was also depending on it. And when I updated to 7, it broke me. I didn't complain because it was pretty clear what was happening and well, actually, maybe I did. I might have brought it up in the Slack channel. Either way, I fully am behind consistent behavior, but I think that asking people to go npm install in the other directory is a bad user experience. It's partly because it's unexpected from the previous behavior, and partly just because it's extra work for a person, right? That said, all of these things I think were better way back in the day when it wasn't a link and when the file protocol copied the whole directory over. So that's my 2 cents. I want that behavior somewhere. And, I understand why you changed it again historically, but I've missed that behavior because it was straightforward and understandable. And I think most cases didn't cause the sort of cascade of unexpected results that linking currently causes.
So, yeah. So it's my preference would be, let's just follow the links, right? Let's do the thing that npm 6 did sometimes, right? Because then it's actually simpler. Then we don't have to say, well, we will install the subdependencies if it's a subfolder of the current project. Otherwise, we just leave it. The hazard and the reason why that was not the case, or at least the argument for it not being the case, is, let's say I have a symlink to to another project, and I have some dependencies that are installed in that other project, and I run npm install in the kind of the linker, right? That's pulling it in. It might be weird if I then changed those dependencies. It might also be weird to lock those down in a lock file within the kind of originating project. So what we might want to do is, if we have a package lock in that target folder, then we kind of do the install in the target folder, but as if it was a top level thing, and we store the metadata there. Now that's a more involved change. Just setting the follow true on Arborist, that's super easy, but it's going to have kind of a weird impact, I think, in some of these cases when it is a separate project.
So I agree. I don't like the changing of the package lock on a separate project. I think that would be pretty unexpected if I got that. Maybe I haven't seen this brought up, and maybe this totally doesn't work. This is totally me off the cuff thinking about this, but one of the things I've seen with the linking behavior that has been problematic is when they get different versions of the same package because they're now under different directory trees. And I've always wondered, is it possible to do like backlinking as a way? So if it's going to be a link, if it linked out and then it found it had a shared dependency, actually just do a reverse where it says like, oh, package foo now is a link back to the foo in the original project.
I think you lost me at one point there.
Yeah,
Okay.
so say that one more time, Wes.
So say you have package A pulled in as a file, as a link into package B. And if package A depends on package C and package B depends on package C, and when you do the install in both directories, you end up with 2 copies today. And that has caused a bunch of problems for different workflows that I've seen. It's particularly things like React are sort of the big ones, but like somewhere it just uses an in-memory reference to like, a symbol or something, and now they're different, and you compare, is that symbol that it exported the same one, and it's not anymore, right? If instead package B, who was the link target, when you built the tree said, oh, actually package C is shared, now let me link my version back to the original versions, the link package A's version in its node modules.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Would resolve that, and it would resolve a bunch of the weird sort of spooky things.
So the thing that's weird, the thing that would be bizarre about that is that now if you're working in this package B separately, its dependency on C is linked over to some other project. That's sort of spooky action at a distance. And if you have multiple different, let's say I have a package, another project X that depends on B and C, and it's installed normally, and then I link B, now B gets updated to the X's C, and you've got a bunch of churn in a project that is in some completely different folder. So I think I mentioned, I dropped this in the Zoom chat just so it wouldn't fall out of my head, but we could also treat, like, let's say we do a link target to a separate project, right? /B. And in that folder, there is a package lock file. We could treat that like we currently treat npm shrink wrap JSON, where, hey, it's a link target and it has a package lock. So everything that I install within that link target, I'm going to follow the package lock of the link target as if it's an npm shrink wrap file. The thing that's weird is we end up storing all of the link target's dependencies within the sort of current project's package lock. And maybe that's fine because that is in fact what's being loaded. It's just a little bizarre is all. And I think, honestly, I feel like part of this problem might go away if we just said, look, like, we don't install dependencies of external links, period. But good news, like, we made workspaces good. So, and in that case, you've got a bunch of links that are not external project dependencies. They're all within a single workspace ecosystem. And I wonder if, like, a lot of this is basically just kind of comes down to using links for things that they're not really intended for.
So, Wes, I see you want to rebuttal.
Yeah, I mean, so don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say there's some easy answer here.
Yeah.
But I do think like people have used the tools at their disposal to solve a hard problem, and not always well, but workspaces don't 100% cover that problem either. So I think saying, well, we don't install them over there, but also like there's this other thing you could be using. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not the problem I have. I have 10 unrelated packages, in my normal workflow, but like today I'm trying to test out one in another, and that's like when you might do the link, right? Which is not really a workspace. Like I'm not trying to define a workspace. I'm just like seeing, are these new changes I made compatible with my other thing? So like it's not simple, and I think we just don't install them might actually be the only one that doesn't have all these weird caveats.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
Be
because in that thing you just mentioned, right? Like if I make a change to tap, I don't even know how many modules that all depend on tap, and a handful of them are linked just because I wanted to test something out. If I want to do that, like I don't want to put everything into one mega workspace just so I can share this one test framework. But I do want to make a change to the test framework and go through a bunch of projects and make sure it didn't break anything. But in that case, I've already installed tap's dependencies, right? So I don't need to follow and do the full install. In fact, so if I do, it might be weird.
Well, yeah, it is. It is weird, oftentimes, right? Yeah. Like you get unexpected results. This does harken back a little bit to one of the things I brought up, especially early on with Rory, is like we need workspaces that aren't file system structure dependent.
Yes.
Right? Like what the problems we want to solve here are those, right? And if we can find another way, which I have a proposal for, I think Chrome has intent to ship with the spec for import maps. If we could just do import maps, it would actually pretty elegantly solve these problems, because you'd make a temporary import map that is all of the things you want all over the file system in any combination that makes sense at the moment. And it's not going to be a spooky action at a distance, because your local project didn't have to change the other project to use its dependencies, right? So if we had that in Node, but even as a loader that you could temporarily use, and NPM had a way to just spit out the proper import map, then I think we could start people, seeing if that solves these problems without having to go and fix the legacy of the past with these, link behaviors and file imports.
So I think that there is a need for a more comprehensive RFC just on like when and how and why do we follow symlinks to install subdependencies? Where do we store that metadata about that? And sort of what lock files or metadata do we respect or treat as authoritative? Even if the conclusion there, which I think feels kind of likely, even if the conclusion is we don't change anything, like NPM 7 is doing the right thing, it's doing it consistently, it's what NPM 6 should have been doing. Sorry that you became dependent on the bugs there. But at least then we would have it documented and have something to point to. And then our phase 2 could be, well, here's when you should use, let's start workspaces out from like, this is shared, this is not, this is linked, whatever. And then worry about the implementation details of workspaces sort of secondarily, right? We first figure out what should be shared and what should not be, and what should be loading what. And I do feel like a lot of these linking problems will kind of evaporate. Not all of them necessarily, and there may still be a bit of polish to be done on NPM link.
Yeah, so Wes is giving the thumbs up, awesome reactions. And I also agree.
The nice thing about that is it punts a little bit, which is good, because I think that there's been enough iterations to know that like those tools are not enough to solve the problems. So like punting a bit is good.
So in terms of actually getting that work done, though, putting together the RFC is probably the key here. Like we need some initial time to actually put words down. And I think it's great to think that we can potentially mob document this, but I don't know if that's actually like efficient. So I'm wondering if like, is this something that we can just backlog as a to do for our team, Isaac? Like somebody to own the action to create that initial RFC to essentially document link depths and why, and essentially what you just stated, like what we do and don't install and why with link depths specifically. Is that sort of accurate?
Yeah, I will. I can take the lead on like documenting the current behavior and also just kind of adding that that thing I mentioned about if the link target has a package lock. Trying to think through like what do we do with that. The simplest is if the link target is outside of the current project, we don't touch it. It's somebody else's problem. But at least say like this is how it was in npm 6 and this is how it is in npm 7 and here's why it changed for consistency purposes, for consistency reasons, etc.
Appreciate that. So just added that we're going to take away that you have the action to draft that initial RFC, allowing the current behavior is sort of what I'm hearing. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of, is there anything else is this sort of a precursor?
RFC.
Yes. Which,
we do those sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, this would have had to happen like a year ago, I think, because I think that's probably when this changed. I could be wrong. So sometimes we back ourselves into the RFCs. Anything else on, let's say, specifically to like link depths versus maybe workspaces, like more broader workspaces conversation, which seems to be the second item we have on the agenda. If not, so as sort of noted, this is that work is going to be a bit of a precursor to us even like really talking in depth probably about the way workspaces are implemented today. But essentially I tried to summarize the problem space that we've continued to hear from folks like Jordan, who unfortunately can't be on the call today, about the differences between hoisted and sort of like shared depths, and how we could potentially like improve the workspace experience if we were to delineate these things better, which might mean changes to how we've implemented workspaces today, since we've treated them essentially as link depths. So I'm wondering, is there any conversation to be had essentially on workspaces that doesn't, essentially include the, what we just talked about? Or, should we circle back on that once we have that RFC? And I guess also, like, does that sort of summarize, what we've been hearing properly? I know I sort of curated this this agenda.
Yeah, I think it does summarize. I mean, at least for me, it summarizes my understanding of the feedback I've been hearing about workspaces, and I think that the really where we're at now, we need somebody to kind of sit down and outline in words in a document, like these are the set of cases that exist. These are the ones where we should be sharing dependencies between things within the workspace, within the workspaces project. And these are cases where it should be sort of a separate install, and leave aside, once we have alignment on that, then start to look at, okay, well, these are the cases we need to share. These are the cases we need to keep separate. Should that be a symlink to a .npm folder? Should that be some clever use of nesting within node modules, whatever. Like I'm confident there's a way to do it.
Do you want to outline those questions? Like you're bringing up a bunch of good questions. Like could we essentially pull those out now and right now, like what we want to essentially answer in that RFC, which might help you or whoever it is that ends up drafting it, like might be easier to solve that way. Like, a question would be like, what do we and don't we install? Or, what is and isn't the scope? And all we're doing is formulating the questions we want answered versus trying to get the answers.
Right. So the question would be which projects have access to which instances of their dependencies. So if you have a workspace project that a workspace that depends on another workspace within the same project, in which cases should that be loading the same code that's in that workspace's folder, and in which cases should it be a separate install? Let's say you have a peer dependency, it's a dev dependency, it's a regular dependency, it's like whatever. Like there's a bunch of kind of aspects to that vector of that like matrix of possibilities, right? And we kind of just need to like write them all down and say whether it's shared or unique. Okay.
And sorry, could you reiterate that last part? Like,
yeah, y'all move on and I will type.
Okay, yeah, if you want to type, that'd be great. So, well, essentially, like these were the two big items on the agenda, unless there were other folks that want to propose any other topics. And again, for folks that are following along, if you want, we'll essentially be adding notes and comments here in the meeting notes doc. But yeah, like I think that going through an exercise of just like outlining what those questions are is going to be, help ensure that like that we can actually make progress here. Go ahead, Wes.
I just figured if it sounds like we have some time. I was just sort of following up on that since I mentioned the source map thing. I was clicking around just seeing where those issues were. And it does look like there's a experimental loader polyfill that somebody made. Would there be any interest from you all on a proposal for generating source maps? Sorry, source map. There's too many map terms. Import maps straight from NPM. Is that something you'd be interested in? Because that would be something, and it would relate to all of these conversations. That would be something I would probably be able to spend a bit more time on if you all are interested in that.
Do you have a link to the experimental project you were talking about?
Yeah, here, I'll post this is the link to the loader, and this is the original issue, which has been open for a long time. And in that issue, I had written way back now, almost, over a year ago now, a example with Arborist of generating the import map. Oh wait. Oh, I never posted that code. I should post that code. Anyway, I could. The question was more along the lines of, do you see that? Because I know there's the Tink work, but like I haven't heard a lot about that recently.
There hasn't been a lot about that recently.
Okay.
we haven't been spending much time in that space. Although like I've been following along in the last year FS hooks and sort of hoping that the foundation and node project would essentially make progress there. And I know there was some work that Chris Hiller and other folks were trying to do to consolidate effort, I think, in that space, specifically, I guess, around hooks. Yeah, I don't think that's a one-to-one to what you're bringing up here. Yeah, sorry.
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's like they're sort of orthogonal. They can solve some of the same problems, just with a like pretty drastically different approach. And I think I built the one proof of concept with this, but I haven't built anything with like a hooks approach as an idea. So I don't know, like I can't compare them on a technical basis, whether there's like clear pros and cons. I guess you could look at what Yarn does as an example of sort of a similar.
You mean Berry, like a virtual
file system, right?
Yeah. So that's where my head was going as you were saying, like, would we consider supporting something like this, and the work with Tink, sort of in this space, I guess, is sort of like, yeah, do you mean virtual file system versus generating an import map? Those are like,
yeah. So I was thinking specifically this as a alternate approach, but again, I don't, we would, if you were interested in this as an alternate approach, I'd probably end up writing an RFC linking to some of these examples and getting my proof of concept into shape to share. If it went that route, one big pro is that this is a standard-based, standards track solution, which has intent to ship in browsers, which I think was the big blocker in the modules working group when I originally proposed it. Which obviously, any solution with file system hooks or a virtual file system is never going to be cross-compatible in the browser environment, right? So that's just sort of right that off the table. Which to me is like a big win for the import map approach. So, I don't want to, go, unless you all want to go deep on what that proposal would look like. I haven't written anything yet. I just figured since we have time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd have to read this a bit more, but yeah, you're right. Like obviously we do have some time right now. But yeah, this is interesting. Maybe could you give like a synopsis of or summary of like the initial issue that you created for support for import maps?
Yeah. So the idea would be, so there's the standard for import maps, which basically is trying to do node style short identifiers in the browser, right? So you could say import Lodash, and then the import map would map from Lodash to a fully qualified URL, right? And then it has a bunch of features in the spec that are intended to support the node style use case, like scoping. So you can say, well, if you import Lodash from module foo, then it should be this URL. But if you import Lodash from module bar, it's a different URL. And you can sort of nest scopes and stuff, sort of like the node modules resolution algorithm, right? So it was intended to be the design of it was intended to be compatible in Node. It evolved quite a bit from there, just because browsers, have different concerns. But it looks like what Chrome is intending to ship is compatible and should work for our use case. So basically, what we would have would be. So the proof of concept is using the loaders. So these are ESM loaders, but I think the one I wrote was just using the old like hack together, like override the file path resolution. What's it called? Resolve file name or something. Resolve file name. And so basically what it does is, instead of using the file system to look up where it should resolve from, it uses the import map and then returns to you the fully resolved file path. This means you get a bunch of interesting features. So one of them, in the relation to what we were talking about earlier, is you want to resolve something from outside the directory you're in? Fine. Like, just tell me where it is. It's an absolute file path, right? Things like, all the work that PNPM does to hard link to save on disk space. Well, you want to implement that? Okay, don't even hard link. Just use the same file path from some shared cache that's system wide, right? Like there's a bunch of interesting things you can do there that don't couple to the file system structure to do the module resolution. You also can do things like aliases without like you can do them in, you know, the import map instead of having to have them be like aliased on the file system. Like there's a bunch of things that sort of magically go away as soon as you have this sort of data structure to represent what your imports look like. So that's one of the reasons why I thought it was so promising for some of these use cases. What it would take from an implementation side would be something to generate the import map and something to consume the import map. So the proof of concept uses a loader. My proposal was to actually just build this straight into Node and just have like Node look in a file path that we agree upon, sort of like it does today with Node modules. So you just have like /node modules /import map.json. And if that exists, Node would load that and use it. There was some feedback on that, so that's still up. Would be definitely up for discussion on what the like technical details would look like. But if you had npm generating them and Node supporting them, the end user would be like pretty much fully transparent. The way it would stand today, if you wanted to do this, which you could do with this loader that I linked that somebody wrote, you would just pass -- loader or experimental, you know, whatever the node flag is, and give it the path to this loader, and then you would have the tooling generate it.
So in terms of like, because you did identify this, I think, accurately, where it's, you know, there's essentially the runtime consumption versus like the generation of the import maps. And I imagine that we could be on like the latter. Yes, the latter of those two as a first. Like might be something that we want to consider, or like helping to create like essentially an import map potentially from package.json, like existing, like, right? I imagine that's kind of where we could help with that. But until we're actually like the runtime, I guess like MPX or like, you know, exec potentially could essentially be respecting, let's say, import maps that are defined. Potentially, right? Like this gets into, as you said, like Tink, or like if we're eventually going to, you know, do this, which, you know, to me makes sense that we would try to get this implemented and supported in Node itself, and then npm could potentially be the help you generate these from your existing package.json. That's kind of like where my head is in terms of like if we were to look at this and make this actionable. I imagine we want to start with, well, can we potentially solve for and help generate based on things we already know, like the dependencies you already have, and like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. That's, I think, where npm really could come in handy here. So again, it's literally just a matter of iterating the arborist tree and like writing this out. It's, I think, 20 lines, I think was it was like really straightforward, the proof of concept code. Obviously there's tons of caveats, and like, you know, you'd have to resolve for those and it'd blow up, you know, after that. But if npm had a command that wasn't maybe always run, but just something you could run on your own that would generate them, I think it would garner a lot more support from the Node side. So most of the pushback a year ago was the fact that it was a WCAG spec, and people apparently hate on WCAG or something, I don't know, and like the fact that it wasn't at the time implemented in any browsers or intended to, but that has changed. Chrome has intent to ship on it. So I think if npm implemented it and Chrome has intent to ship, that might be the driving force to get the modules group on board. At which point I would definitely be, this is something I've wanted to put time and effort into for a long time. So I would definitely be able to champion that. I just got really frustrated with the modules group a year ago when it was like, this seems like a good idea, and it is standards track, and everybody was like, well, it's not the right standards body, so sorry. Like, it was kind of frustrating, but I'd be willing to pick it back up if you all are, you know, not going to just implement Tink and say, well, this is our solution for it, you know, kind of like Yarn did.
I don't think you have to worry about us implementing Tink too quickly.
Come on.
There's plenty of other, I mean, honestly, like there are other, Tink is cool. It's a great idea. I don't want to like downplay it, but put next to like getting workspaces working really well, or
Yes.
overrides, or some other things that are going to sort of have a more substantial user experience improvement, or functionality improvement. Like Tink sort of becomes this like optimization that we could do anytime, and it's not really essential to get right away. There may also be some other changes to how we sort of do trees or manage data or caching that like would make sense to do before implementing like a virtual file system type of thing.
We may want to start just referring it to it as, like npm supporting a virtual file system, a virtual like dependency resolution, versus like, the project itself, because I'm not sure if we would pick that up specifically.
I'm sure
right?
we would
like,
not. Right.
Right. Exactly. Right. So
it's very tied to npm 6. It's sort of a very, it's a proof of concept that proved its concept. And, if we were to do it now, it would probably be using different node implementations, a different, tree management stuff. It would be a whole new thing.
Yeah. Thoughts, maybe Isaac or anybody else, though, on Wes's speaking to and potentially us supporting like generation of import maps, not necessarily like, consuming them.
Yeah, I think that would be, potentially a great way to go. Again, I mean, as far as just kind of getting back to the original problem here of how are we going to make workspaces really good, we sort of need to figure out like, okay, what is the behavior? Like when I do require X from within packages /Y, which thing do I get? Then it's sort of like, okay, well, depending on where we're at in the technical landscape, do we implement that using import maps somehow? Do we implement that using symlinks or import maps, just the sort of thing that we can generate for your benefit, but you can use them or not? That's all kind of up in the air.
I think there's also something to be said for it being being used for like Node.js, and how it plays into that as well.
Tierney, do you have has there been any conversation on those together? I haven't seen it. I'd love to read it.
I believe there might have been a little bit. I have had individual talks with people about how it could potentially help. Like it could help kind of get away from having to do like .js in the path, and kind of make the experience a little bit more nodey. So that's kind of the big thing. The big one that is like people care about I guess I get why, but that's a big one. And then there's other features that come, other benefits that come from it, in the context of VSM, I think. So there are people I will talk to, and I'll tell you who those people are offline.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I mean, we could end early and go into a private session if we want. So in terms of circling back, I know, Isaac, you've taken some time to add some questions here for the, I guess, eventual draft that we're going to queue up. Did you want to speak to any of those notes that you've added, or no?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing is sort of, I'm not sure it's an optimal use of time to go through them now, unless
we have 10 minutes, and I don't know if there's anybody else had any other items they wanted to bring up.
Yeah, essentially what I want to see is like, given a particular case where I have like a workspace package that has a particular kind of dependency that is a particular kind of spec, which either is referenced in the workspace or is not. Which thing do I get? Do I get a shared copy? Do I get a thing from within the workspaces project, or do I get a new thing that's installed just for that one workspace? And I know there's kind of a few sort of pithy ways to summarize or to kind of apply some kind of principle to it, but we really need, like, ideally, we would elaborate exhaustively all the possibilities and, you know, write down the answer for each one of those. And now we've got our nice set of test cases and we can go implement to that really easily. Those of you who have written code side by side with me know this is what I do, like, all the time for every problem. You write a matrix, you fill it out exhaustively and tediously, and then usually the pattern kind of jumps out and it makes it a lot easier to do the right thing. and when it doesn't jump out well, you've got your test cases. So
there you go.
Apply some regular expressions to it to turn it into an actual JavaScript test.
It's document-driven design. So
yep.
Yeah. Cool. And Roy reacted crying, laughing.
I just recently was like sort of dragging Roy through through this process with npm diff arguments.
Yeah.
But it can be a tedious process, but it's saves a lot of even more tedious processes in the future.
For sure. Did folks have anything else they want to bring up on these topics specifically, or anything else that may have not been added to the agenda? I know this is sort of a bit of a deep dive that we've gone through. High level deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I can give folks time back today, which might be nice to start the new year. And ideally, if folks have any comments or want to essentially add to this, feel free to do async in the RFC's repo as normal. Appreciate everybody jumping on today again. And yeah, feel free to continue to queue up RFCs or any feedback that you have. It sounds like the action item here will be to ideally get some documentation written or an RFC written by next week, if possible, for our next call. And then that might be something that we can look at together and review again. Yeah, just one more chance for folks to add any announcements or any last comments. If not, we'll see you next week, and appreciate everybody jumping on again today, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.
Bye.